Watson, nurse practitioner. Today we are going to discuss traveling with children. I'm going to do a main focus of kids 10 and under. This is a disclaimer, not medical advice, recommendations, or a diagnosis. This does not take the place of a wild child check or a sick visit. If you have any questions, please see your healthcare provider. So, everything that I'm going to share are things that I have tried and have worked really well for me and my family. If you follow along, you know that me and the girls travel a lot with just us three, and then Aaron travels with us too, of course, at times. But we get on the plane and we go to our little spot in Mexico quite often. So there are things that I have tried and they've worked, and things that I've tried and they didn't work, and I kind of just stick to the things that I know work for me and the girls. So first, when we traveled with Aspen when she was a baby, things that I would try to do were make sure that when we were on the plane, it was nap time, feeding and nap time, right? So when we get on the plane, we could eat, and then hopefully by the time we're taking off, she's asleep or going to sleep. Aspen also takes a pacifier, or took a pacifier then, and so if we had finished our bottle, she was able to suck on the pacifier. This sucking motion helps for the pressure, like for the babies to pressurize as you're changing altitudes, and so it helps the pressure in their ears, okay? So that's my number one tip. Make sure that if you're flying with infants that you do so in and around feeding or nap time give them a pacifier if they do take that. Now, as Aspen has gotten a little older, there are some things that I have figured out. And let me back up just a minute. If you're having to travel with breast milk or formula, you can check the plane requirements, but typically they let you bring on your formula or your pre-made bottles, and even some distilled water if you needed that. Now, finding a way to heat it up can be a little challenging. We ran into that problem once, but there are ways, there are things you can do to try to manipulate those circumstances. So, another thing I'll just bring up real quick, swell bottles work really well if you have to store milk, or if you want to prep milk, do formula if you have to, or your breast milk in one of these, and then it stays at, either stays warm or it stays cold if you need it cold. And then you can just pour this directly into a bottle if you need that. So as Aspen's gotten older, some things that I like to do, I like to take my own snacks. That way I know what she's getting, and she likes fruit and she likes crackers and things like that. So I always take those and I put them in hard containers, so when they go in her backpack, they're not getting squished and I don't have a big food mess. So she always has a backpack, I have a backpack, London has a backpack, and that leaves our hands really free. But we put those those fruits that are in a container, or the protein chips and things like that in containers so they don't get squished. So I like to take snacks with me for several reasons. I know what my kids eat. I don't have to spend a ton at the airport, and usually when kids are so hyper and they're so excited to go somewhere, all they want is junk. So I try to eliminate that. When it comes to drinks though, however, I always buy a bottle of water there, and Aspen will take a sippy cup. This is not my favorite sippy cup for many reasons, but it is one that's leak proof. And so if it gets thrown in a bag, or if it gets turned upside down somehow, it's not gonna spill. So we take a cup similar to this when we're traveling. And then back to the swell bottle, London always takes this. It holds a lot, it keeps it room temperature, and it's got a lid. I have made the mistake of doing taking a cup with me that did not have a lid on it, like it was just a straw, like a kid's Yeti cup. And lo and behold, the backpack got laid sideways and everything spilled out, and it was a big mess. So always make sure your drinks have a lid on them. When you go through TSA, if you're flying, obviously, unless it is breast milk or formula and you label it that way, you cannot have any fluids in these. So, you want to talk to TSA about it when you go through. Another thing that I do with the kids is I make sure each of them have their own activities. So London packs her own backpack. We typically do it together because sometimes she throws things in there she doesn't need. But I let her pick out the activities she wants to do. She has to have a book and something to do on the plane. No electronics. Like, we try really hard not to do electronics. Typically the last 30 minutes on the plane, or if we get stuck in the air, which we have before, I'll let her pull out some electronic and play a game or listen to some saved music. But normally it's activities, it's things to do. So for London, she'll do a coloring book. She does word puzzles. She does mazes, sketchbooks, things of that nature. For Aspen or for your littles, I always take one or two of these. It has the marker that doesn't make a mess, right? It only colors on these pages. And so when she's scribbling around, she's not going to get it everywhere all over the plane. And when she flies her arm with the marker in it out at me, she's not going to write all over my clothes. So these are my favorite to take for her. I'll also go to the dollar store and buy the little bitty Play-Dohs. And her and I will sit there and play Play-Doh with each other. Her and her sister will play. And so those are just some easy, clean activities that we can do on the plane. They don't take up much room in the backpack for, you know, both her and London to be able to do things. When London takes crayons, though, she doesn't take a box of crayons. She doesn't take a box of markers. We do the pencils that screw. That way the color comes out and we can pull the color back down so we don't make a huge mess. And the crayons aren't getting broken and the marker isn't getting all over everything. So those are just some things we do. I will say, going through potty training with Aspen and traveling with her that way, we I put her in a diaper, and I was very honest and upfront with her. You have a pamper on, but you need to tell mom when you need to go potty. And so we would do that when it was appropriate. There are times when we, specifically us, we have several stops along the way before we make it to our house in Cancun. And so there are times where we're not always able to go to a restroom at that moment. And so that's why I keep a pamper on her. I found that it makes my life a lot less stressful. If mama is not stressed, that I am not, you know, taking it out on the kids and grumpy and being snappy and short and things like that. And so traveling goes a whole lot smoother. I've also learned that a little bit of freedom goes a long way. So when we get to the airport, we find ourselves a corner and we run and play and do all the things. As long as we're not disturbing others, I kind of let them be. We stay clean, of course. We're not rolling around on the floor, but I just kind of let them get their energy out. Same thing when we're waiting, you know, when we've had to do like waiting on a ferry or waiting to be transported from one area to the next in a different airport. I tend to stay back of the lines. It doesn't matter if I'm the first one on or the last one on, and give my kids their space and let them get that energy out, because I know we're going to be sitting for quite some time. So a lot of planning ahead, kind of thinking, and number one, just not being stressed about the situation. I hope this helps. If you have any specific questions, I would love to answer them. I love to travel. I love to travel with my kids. And so I'm up for any suggestions you have for me as well.